we have the interview with Victor and Wendy Zammit, an excellent and very interesting couple from Australia. They're veteran researchers and authors and lecturers. Their subjects they cover include paranormal, the spiritual, and they specialise in life after death. And as you understand, they put together a legal case about why there is such a thing as life after death. This is an interesting subject. I discuss it all the time, but I don't know as much about it as these two guys. So let's hear them. This is the second in a two-part interview. The first one was last week, program 106. You go for the, all you have to do is go to the show notes, and you'll be able to listen to that. So please do stay where you're sitting. Do not touch your dials, and let's listen to Victor and Wendy Zammit. Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio. Well, ladies and gentlemen, HPANWO show listeners, we have back with us the welcome return of Victor and Wendy Zammit. Hello, Victor and Wendy. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Ben. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Ben. Lovely to be here from downtown Sydney, Australia.
It's lovely to have some people from all this distance away. We have a lot of listeners from Australia, and yeah, I hope they'll be tuning in, or whatever time of day it is there. Have them on the air. So it's probably early morning when this show goes to air. So I admire you for staying up, ladies and gentlemen. Now, or getting up early rather. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off last week, and we're discussing.
Yes,
Victor and Wendy have written a book called "A Lawyer Presents a Case for the Afterlife." It's the second.
The evidence for the afterlife.
Sorry, I must get those things up. The evidence for the afterlife, the case for the afterlife, is the first book. We'll be giving you the links where you can obtain this literature at the end of the show. But we're going to pick up by talking about physical mediumship, because this is where we didn't have time to go into this in the last program. But physical mediumship is, I think, one of the rarest and most interesting kinds of mediumship. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, physical mediumship, of course, is something that where it's easy to test anything, any phenomenon. For example, in materialization, we can, or our medium, David Thompson, could duplicate what he's doing over time and space, and keeping variable constant. And he keeps on getting the same result under conditions that are experimental. This means then that it's repeatable and it's objective. He's been all over England, all over the Europe. He's now in Florida. He's following the same formula, and he's getting the same result. So that, in a way, that is very, very good source of what is it?
Well, the thing about physical mediumship, Ben, as I'm sure you would know, but maybe your listeners are not aware. Physical mediumship is mediumship which is objective, where people can hear and see the spirits. They can either hear them or see them or feel them. It's not just a voice in the head of the medium. The voice is actually in the room. It's independent of the medium. And that's what's really exciting. There are different kinds of physical mediumship, of course. Sometimes you just get the voices. That's called direct voice. Sometimes the spirit people actually materialize. They actually become fully flesh and blood. They become in form and walk around the room. That's called materialization mediumship.
And that's my favorite one, Ben, because we've experienced over 200 of these sessions with David Thompson, and 100 materializations involving reunion. And it's so spectacular because there's no way anybody can be fraudulent with that, because like when my own sister came through, she used the same voice she had when she was on Earth, before she crossed over. When Wendy's father came true. He crossed over some 50 years ago, and when he was, telling us all that it's the same voice. It's fantastic the way, to hear the same voice last time you heard 50 years ago. It is so fabulous. And this is why I say materializations are the greatest proof for the afterlife.
Now this is really amazing what you're describing. I mean, I regularly attend spiritualist churches, and there's been mediums there who say things, they relate messages, but you can't actually detect the message yourself. They are the middlemen.
Yeah.
And in this case,
they're the mental mediums, aren't they?
Yeah. Now, mental mediumship is the most common kind of mediumship, and that's what most people are aware of today. And there are very, very few physical mediums around. I mean, you can't just look one up in the telephone book. I think in England we know of maybe 5 physical mediums who are demonstrating publicly.
Not even 5.
It's extremely rare. I mean,
it's extremely rare.
Extremely rare. I mean, what David is doing, there wouldn't be more than maybe 4, maximum 5, I'd say. Yes.
It takes a long time for a physical medium to develop. I'm not sure if you're aware of that Ben, no. But normally they start off as mental medium, but then they have to sit in the dark with a group every week. Sometimes it takes 7 years, sometimes it takes 10 years, sometimes it takes even longer than that to develop physical mediumship. And these days, that's a really big ask. I don't know if you've ever had a circle, a group of people who want to sit every week, but trying to get, say, 6 people to come every Wednesday night and sit for an hour and not miss a week for 7 years when nothing is happening is a big ask.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I can imagine. I have sat in circle a couple of times, but I've never done that particularly. I had a sort of like mediumistic kind of experience myself a few years ago, and since then I've been interested in it. But to be honest, I mean, I've got to admit, I mean, I haven't had that level of determination. So,
but we had to study every area of afterlife evidence because we want to make sure that we're thorough in what we're doing. And I tell you something. There's that guy from England, only a young guy, Gary Mannion. Gary Mannion, I attended one of his physical mediums here in Sydney when he came to Sydney, and it was so sensational. During the session, I mean, he was in trance, so he was completely unconscious, sitting in a chair,
tied into his chair,
and his ankles tied and both hands tied and gagged around the mouth. But somebody materialized, and it was too dark. I said, "Look, I want to see you. I want to see your face," like that. He said, "Wait." He said, "I'll be back." 20 minutes later, he came back, and he had this luminous plug where we were able to see his face. Now this is, it was so fantastic because we saw a human being, totally unknown to us, nothing like the medium because he's in trance, and much taller, and he put this plug underneath his chin, and we could see his full face in the light. And those all around me, about 10 of us, saw his face. And that was so good, so persuasive, so convincing.
It's an amazing experience. Now one of the most interesting cases of physical mediumship, I think, not least because of the implications of it and how it delved into the area of espionage, politics, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Was Helen Duncan, and you discussed Helen Duncan in your book in some detail in the first book which I've read, and also I myself am very interested in the case. I've made a film about this subject, a feature-length documentary about this subject. I've done a live lecture, and also of course this is the 70th anniversary this year. 2014 is the 70th anniversary of the witchcraft trial. So,
right.
Who was Helen Duncan, and why was she so significant in this story?
Helen Duncan was probably the best physical medium in the 20th century. She was absolutely incredible. She was able to, well, I'll tell you how good she was. She was actually tried as being a false medium.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 40 witnesses who came from all over the world at that trial. And these were big, important people who were in all different professions. And they testified that they had seen their loved ones close up through Helen Duncan's mediumship. She was like David Thompson, but she was an absolutely sensational medium. Victor will tell you what led to her arrest.
No. You there, Ben?
Yes, we have some back because she was. This all kicked off. Basically, she was a physical medium since about 1929. She was born in 1897 in Scotland, but it was in the Second World War that everything kicked off, and it's very, very important to realise the political situation at the time. The war was raging, and what happened was she started doing a series of seances in which she gained the attention of the intelligence service. Yeah, this is a really, really important case, Victor.
Right.
Tell us exactly what happened to get her into all this terrible trouble.
Well, the critical thing was when a sailor materialized in one of her sessions, and he told the people there, he said, look, will you get in touch with my mother and tell her that our destroyer was destroyed by the German U-boat, but I'm feeling okay, I'm right, that's fine. So the circle there, Helen Duncan Circle, got in touch with his mother, and his mother, I think, and then what was his name? I forgot.
There was Morris Barbanel, who was the editor of Psychic News.
He got in touch with the Naval Office, and he wanted to get confirmation that HMAS Hood, the Barnum, was really sunk. And the Department of Navy went furious because it was supposed to be a secret. For public morale, they did not want anyone to know the British ships were being sunk. At least these two ships. One was the Hood, and the other one was the HMS Barnum.
Yeah, these were the two. These were. Sorry, carry on, Wendy.
Oh, sorry. So after that, we know Brigadier Firebrace. He was the head of military security for Scotland, where this was all taking place. And he confirmed that she was put under military surveillance from that time on. And then when it came in 1944, when they were coming up towards the D-Day, that's when somebody complained.
Yeah, and they didn't want to take a risk that you could come up with something to divulge all the plan by the Western powers to invade Normandy.
Well, this is amazing because, I mean, in the case of Hood and the Barham, that was 1941. These were two very, very powerful ships which the Royal Navy lost. And this was, I suppose, this wasn't long after Dunkirk, and there was the Blitz, and morale was very low, and so they decided to keep the government decided to keep thinking secret, and even some of the relatives didn't know that their loved ones had been lost. And then I suppose that for morale is one thing, but with D-Day, secrecy was essential. And I mean, I know they even built a fake village in Dorset, and you could visit it. They were absolutely, and so I mean, we hear a lot in the world of espionage how someone is killed because they know too much. But in this case, we have an unpluggable leak with Helen, because if you can't silence someone even by killing them, there's not a lot you can do. And if Helen was giving out these secrets which the people who passed over had, and they were just revealing to her in the seances, and they only need one spy in the seance room, and the secrecy will be blown.
It's sad, really, because I mean, it wasn't herself that she was saying anything. She was totally unconscious during her materialization. It's whoever comes through. And she has no control who comes through.
But Ben, they could easily have just gone and said to her, listen, we'll give you £100 a week to look after your family. Don't give any more seances for the next 12 months. It would have saved a lot of money. And I mean, she was supporting a disabled husband and 6 kids. She was doing it for money at that stage.
I mean, I actually confirmed this because I went to Nottingham, where Helen spent a lot of time, and she actually did her last séance in Nottingham. And
right.
I spoke to a lady who actually who'd known her when she was when she was a young girl, and she said that Helen had been 100% behind the war effort, like everybody was at that time. It was really united the nation, and the amount it would have cost. I mean, just for a few months, they could have just paid her off, told her to not do any séances. And she would have agreed to it. She would have, and it would have cost less than the trial.
I think that there was someone in the British bureaucracy who was uninformed, who was closed-minded skeptic, and who was also stupid in not knowing what the issues were at the time. The balance against that, we must not forget that Churchill sought the services of a medium. What was her name again on there? I forgot.
Bertha Harris.
Oh, Bertha Harris.
All the way through the war, Bertha Harris was coming up to number 10 Downing Street every Sunday night advising Churchill.
And when Churchill heard about it, he went absolutely furious. And it was Churchill who abolished the statutory law of, what was the
Witchcraft Act.
The Witchcraft Act.
The Witchcraft Act of 1735. It was a law that was over 200 years old, and it was the only reason it hadn't already been repealed was because they couldn't be bothered to get enough MPs together to repeal it. And so they dug out an archaic law to put Helen away for 9 months. They could have used the existing legislation, but
then it was their intention to lock her up. So much so, pardon me, that during the trial, there was the British justice, not the British, the English justice committed a most fundamental, most heinous transgression in her trial. She was not allowed to demonstrate the skill the police said she didn't have.
Yeah, this is very interesting. This is a very interesting part.
So much so that the Scottish Law Society and the English Law Society complained bitterly to the Attorney General there and or whoever looks after the Justice Department, and they told them, you cannot do this. You cannot charge a person with a crime, with like fraud, and not give that person the opportunity to demonstrate that she has that skill.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, what happened was, in January of 1944, the police raided a séance in Portsmouth, and there were 2 intelligence agents in the audience, a guy called Rupert Cross and a guy called Stanley Worth. And Stanley Worth is still alive. He's still alive, actually, somewhere in New Zealand.
He's in Tasmania.
No, he's in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
He's very old, but he still sticks. He sticks by his story still. But I mean, what happened was she was then prosecuted. They said that this is very interesting at the trial because the prosecution case had virtually nothing except the testimony of these. The principal testimony was these 2 guys, right? Yeah. There was a few others, but the thing is, what they did was they got a guy called Harry Price. He came down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this is common practice in law, Victor. I'm not a lawyer myself, but I mean, Price actually briefed the prosecution witnesses. He briefed them. I mean, it sounds to me like he coached them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, technically, no one is to coach witnesses. If that was known at the time, the defense could have objected to that. I mean, it's law even today. No one is to coach witnesses.
So Barrister came under a lot of criticism. He was totally inadequate.
No, but I'm not so sure about that, but he called in some 39 witnesses. Some of them, one of them was wing commander, and they all stated that she was genuine.
Charles Loseby, his name was Charles Loseby, and I think he was a spiritualist, and I think he meant well, but he underestimated what he was up against. That's the problem. He really didn't understand exactly what was going on behind the scenes, and this was his downfall and Helen's, unfortunately. But
the other one, sorry, and the other one that I find most ludicrous. You have someone like from the SPR saying that ectoplasm, there's no such thing as ectoplasm. Ectoplasm is nothing but cheesecloth. That is the most stupid statement anybody can make, because I've witnessed myself many, many times ectoplasm in red light.
Yeah,
I thought with David himself, that there was this huge amount of ectoplasm being coming down from his nose and from his mouth.
Yeah,
and we all could see it. We all. I mean, by now thousands of people witnessed this ectoplasm.
Ectoplasm.
So it's real.
For the listeners, ectoplasm is a substance which issues from the body of a physical medium in trance, which then forms into various solid objects and people and individuals and things like that. And as you said, I mean, if this is cheesecloth, the idea that Helen Duncan was using cheesecloth goes back to a single experiment, or single set of experiments done in 1930 by guess who? Harry Price.
Yes.
And she didn't even come up with the idea. It was a lady. It was actually an employee of Helen, who was probably a spy, working for one of Harry Price's rivals, called Molly Goldney, and Mary McGinley, sorry, and they said that she was swallowing this cheesecloth and then bringing it up, regurgitating it. And now, I mean, can you just imagine what that involves? I mean, swallowing a 6-foot square piece of textile, keeping it in your stomach, bringing it up without bringing up your breakfast and everything else that's in there, and then swallowing it again without touching it with your hand.
It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, one would have to be so stupid to believe that. But you want me to tell you something more interesting than that about this cheesecloth. Someone called Professor West. You know what he said? He said, I got it. I know how Helen Duncan was able to sneak the cheesecloth in the seance room. He put it up her rectum. Now, some 24 years ago, I wrote to this Professor West. I said, look, I'll give you £20,000 if you can demonstrate to us what you're talking about.
You could say, here's the cheesecloth, now drop your trousers and try it yourself.
Now, something very interesting, Ben, you may have seen on the internet some photos of Helen Duncan with a model, supposedly a doll. And the skeptics are saying, see, Helen Duncan was caught out, she was a fraud. Have you seen those photos?
I have, and I know that they're not in any way connected with the case in hand. They're not connected with anything she did around this time.
Do you know where they were taken?
The photographer's name, I can't remember his name now and where it was done, but go on.
Something very interesting. Here we've got one of the grandchildren of Helen Duncan who's got Henry Duncan's journal. And he claims in the journal that they created those mock-ups to show journalists what physical mediumship was all about.
How
physical mediumship works. And now that makes a lot of sense if you actually look at those photos. Those photos, she was not in her seance gear. She was not wearing her black gear and her gloves. She wasn't in a seance. And those photos were taken to demonstrate how physical mediumship works. And yet the Wikipedia skeptics, everything on the internet that you read, you'll see those photos saying Helen Duncan was a fraud. She was caught out in fraudulent mediumship. Didn't happen.
No. So these photos, she agreed to set for these photos as a demonstration to show people what it would look like if she was doing it.
Exactly.
And then the skeptics have got hold of this and they said, well, look, there's a photo of Helen Duncan in trance faking it. So this is very misleading. And the Wikipedia page on Helen Duncan, I actually went and revised it. This is very interesting because I think there's deliberate censorship still going on.
Of course there is.
I did. Do you know what? It was edited back within the hour, even though I edited it in according. I obeyed Wikipedia's rules. I put in a source reference and everything. I put in I did it all correctly. They edited it back.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an organised campaign, Ben. It's one of the biggest issues in this issue in the paranormal at the moment. It's not just the afterlife; it's any fringe area of science.
No, but even anything to do with the paranormal, with the afterlife, there are these closed, very closed-minded skeptics who are being paid to twist things around and to destroy anything to do with the paranormal. I've been calling them the wiki terrorists.
It's absolutely true, and I mean maybe in a short while we'll go into more detail about why this is going on. But I think we should mention a few more details of Helen Duncan's trial.
Yeah.
One of those is that it was a total kangaroo court. Charles Loseby, who was not a barrister, he was not a member of the Inns of Court, he was really out of his depth. And it was ridiculous because on the first case, the thing was when the police raid in Portsmouth took place, and I've actually visited the place where it took place. I actually filmed inside the room where this.
Wow!
And you can see it in my film on the subject. What happened was, according to Worth and Cross, the two intelligence agents, who were provably intelligence agents, they lied in court when they were asked that question.
Of course they would, yeah.
What happened was there were police waiting outside. A guy called Chief Constable Arthur West was in charge. He was in charge of Portsmouth Police. He was a major figure in the cover-up as well. And they basically stood up and shone torches, and they blew whistles in the middle of the séance, and the police were basically burst in from outside the door. And they said they reached forward and they grabbed this fake ectoplasm, which they said was a king-size bedsheet, right? Now, the thing about it is, Loseby said, well, where is this bedsheet then? And do you know what Worth said? He said, well, we must have lost hold of it. We must have just lost it. I said, what? If the police raid, the light switched on, the police burst in a matter of moments. They got hold of this crucial piece of physical evidence against Helen to prove that she was fake, and they lose it. And you know,
it's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible, isn't it?
Do you know what? I mean, do you know what they said? It's really, really it's really hilarious. It wasn't so sad for Helen. Loseby said, well, why? Well, how do you know it was that? How do you? They said, well, where is it? And they said, well, there was a lady with a sling in the front row. She must have shoved it into the sling. With she got one bad arm, and in the chaos of police raid, she shoved a king-size bedsheet into the sling. And they said, well, how do you know she hid it? And he said, well, he said, well, how else could we have failed to find it? Yeah. That's the logic they were using.
Yeah.
And it's ludicrous.
Exactly. And they were looking for fake beards and fake wigs and things like that. They didn't find any of those.
They didn't find anything.
And you know what they said? That the Loseby said, well, what he asked actually, he said, well, why didn't the police? Well, what happened when the police searched the witnesses? And they said the police didn't search the witnesses; they just let them go. So they had to, because if the police had searched the witnesses, they would have found nothing.
Yeah.
And as we said in the book, Ben, fraudulent mediums were usually charged under the Vagrancy Act in the local court and given a fine of 5 shillings.
That's right, yeah. Only 5 shillings.
They were not sentenced to 9 months jail.
That's right. I mean, Helen has actually already been prosecuted under the Vagrancy Act, and she had a 10 shilling fine. And they must have been a bit more harsh on her. That was 1932. So she had a form of conviction, you see. They exploited as well.
No, not so quite.
No, that's an interesting one there. She was never actually convicted. It was not proven. It was the Scottish verdict on that formal one. It was on. It was, and that was the setup as well.
This was Essendon Hall.
It was a trivial matter, yes. So that was a really interesting one. If you actually follow that up, you'll find that she was never actually found guilty on that one. It's often portrayed as being a conviction, and people take that against her.
Yeah.
I
think it was the Scottish verdict of not proven. It's kind of like, well, I'm just going to pay a fine to get out of this.
Yeah, this was in Edinburgh. This was
in Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
All right. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, even if she had been, I don't think it would have proved the case for the prosecution. But and then of course we get to the incident where Loseby sort of like in a sense, he was waiting for the next part of the trial, because he said, well, it's simple, I'll just get Helen to do a demonstration in court.
That's right,
And this was his mistake, because he appealed to it. It was Recorder Dodson was the judge.
Yeah.
And he appealed, he said, if Helen Duncan is a real, why not here, in the Central Criminal Court of London?
Yeah.
Let us call her spirit guides to help her. All she requires is a cubicle and a partitioned off cubicle and a red light, nothing more. And then Dodgson, he refused point blank. And if Loseby appealed, and then he agreed to poll the jury, and the jury elected not to. And I just think to myself, what? I mean, who on that jury would not want to see something like that? Even out of personal curiosity.
Look, Ben, that was manipulated by the administration because they wanted to put her in jail.
Yeah.
They dug up this old law, which they hadn't done for hundreds of years, and they just wanted her out of the way. And you could hear some senior bureaucrats saying, "I don't care how you do it, just put her in jail until the war is over." You know.
Yeah.
And it's sad for her because it was totally unnecessary, really, totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
And she was a superb medium. That's the incredible thing that, you know, when you read all the testimonies of the people who spoke at her trial, she was absolutely sensational.
We had nurses there, and you have all kinds of people, and it was amazing because they all stated that I met my loved one, he materialized, and I talked to her or him. You know? But they didn't want to hear that. You know, they just. It was an endeavor to put her in jail, and that was their scope. You know, that was their idea. That was their goal. Get her in and make sure she doesn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
sad, really, very, very sad, very, very sad.
Yeah, it is. And she came out of jail and she carried on. It was the 22nd of September she was released, and that was the end of her sentence.
Yeah.
They gave her Chief Constable Arthur West, who was the man in charge of the police raid, gave her a damning character assessment. He called her a pest on society.
But he was justifying his own closed-mindedness.
Well, I think he was part of the conspiracy. And
he was part of the conspiracy.
Exactly.
I mean, the evidence is he was a very close friend of Stanley Worth.
Oh yeah.
He was involved. And he'd been known to actually commit fraud before. I mean, there was a guy in the court next door actually which West was in the Old Bailey actually as a witness in the court next door, because there was a guy of murder. And he was acquitted in the end, which is just as well because they had hanging in those days. And West was one of the chief prosecution witnesses, and he said, "No, West framed me." And so he's very, very dodgy character indeed. And now this is so basically she was released on the 22nd of September. By then D-Day was over. She went back to practicing her mediumship, and then she did her last seance in 1956, in October 1956 in Nottingham, where she suffered injuries which led to her death.
No, this is where the police broke down the door, and they put the bloody lights on when the ectoplasm was still out, and the ectoplasm shot back towards the medium, Helen Duncan, and it killed her. It took a few days, 2 weeks, I think, to get killed, but that's what killed her.
Yeah, she got burned. She actually had burns on her chest, which she was treated for the burns, and she went back home, but she died.
I don't know if your listeners are aware, Ben, that ectoplasm just cannot stand the light. It's the life force of the medium, and if any light gets on it, or even if it's touched at the wrong time, it just springs back into the medium like elastic. There's a very interesting story. I don't know if your listeners might have heard of the direct voice medium Leslie Flint.
Okay.
But even in direct voice, it has to take place in the dark. Now, Leslie Flint was in the army during the Second World War. Have you heard that story?
I've not, no.
It's a fascinating story. He was, because he had so much contact with the afterlife, he felt that he couldn't fight in the war. This is at the same time as we're talking about Helen Duncan. But to do his bit, he volunteered to be a bomb disposal expert, which was far more dangerous.
Yeah.
Anyhow, one night in his barracks, his friends were asking him if he could demonstrate his direct voice mediumship. So he said, "Oh, look, why not?" And while he was in the middle of it, the sergeant opened the door and put the light on. Now, the ectoplasm sprung back into his body, and he said it was like getting a kick in the gut, and he wasn't right for the next 3 weeks. Very interesting story.
I'll have to look that up. I mean, is it in your...
It's in his book. In Leslie Flint's book.
I'll have to check that out, because this is why, to answer the skeptics, one of the skeptics issues, this is why you don't find this sort of thing happening very often. It has to happen in very secure and controlled circumstances.
Yes,
you can't just go down.
Exactly, Ben. We were present even in David's seances, and we've had a couple of mishaps. One night, after the seance, the chair moved very suddenly. They moved the chair and they bang it down, and one of the girls just screamed out in shock. You know, David's face was cut as a result of that. The medium's face was cut. Another night, somebody touched the trumpet by mistake, and he got cuts on his hand. It is dangerous. You have to watch it.
This is really, really interesting stuff we're talking about here, and so I do urge the listeners to check this stuff out for themselves. Don't believe the hype. Certainly don't believe Wikipedia. And investigate, and also read the book. Read Victor and Wendy's book, and also their 2 books, and also Leslie Flint. Now we're going to stay within the legal framework now, which is appropriate considering Victor's profession, and we're going to talk about a lady called Sally Morgan. Now I had a big rant about this. I made a YouTube video, and I also wrote an article about this subject.
Right.
So this happened actually here in Britain, and
yes.
Interestingly, when part 1 of this program was broadcast on the 30th of September, Sally actually appeared in Oxford at the New Theatre. So if anyone in Oxford was listening to this program, they were missing Sally's show. But she's doing her thing on stage when we go to air on that day. So that's
right.
But Sally Morgan is a very famous, a kind of celebrity psychic. And then she was. Someone wrote an article about her in the Daily Mail, which is not my favourite newspaper in the world, but even by the Daily Mail standards, this was a very, very poor article indeed, and it had terrible consequences. So, what do you know about that, Victor? And Wendy?
Well, we got some emails and links to the articles about this case. We've got extracts from the Daily Mail and what actually was decided eventually. But I think what happened is the insurance, the Daily Mail's insurance, did not allow the matter to go to court.
Oh, right.
So they settled out of court on
they settled out of court. They settled out of court, and but certain precedents were created. One is that now, see, there is a recognition of mediumship, that mediums are professionals. Now, this kind of acceptance did not exist in the time of Helen Duncan. And Helen Duncan, the court, by conduct, showed that this mediumship is all nonsense. Okay? But not today. This is very important precedent created. What's her name again? Sally Morgan. And not only that, as I said earlier, now anyone who wants to attack or criticize a medium must be specific. If the attacker, if the critic says, "Oh, this medium is a fraud," he or she has got to show what aspect of the demonstration is fraudulent.
When previously,
this is very, very important.
Yeah. So when previously they could have just said, "Oh, she's a medium."
Oh, yeah.
Now they can't do that.
That's right. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
The interesting thing is you'll find a lot of the critics will just say, "Oh, this is how she could have been fraudulent."
Yeah.
You know, she could have done this, and then they say, therefore she must be a fraud. But this case, it's not enough to say she could have done it. You must prove that she did do it.
Yeah. I mean, the author of the article, Paul Zenon, who's a well-known skeptic as well in this country, what he did was what happened was in September 2011, Sally did a show in Dublin in Ireland, and some people called a local TV station to complain that they heard a voice from the theatre control room predicting supposedly psychic readings. Now, what the skeptics are saying now, this had been done before in 1986 by a guy called Peter Popoff, he was a Christian televangelist who did these sort of miraculous healing sessions. Now, the thing about it is, what happened in that case was somebody actually went into his audience with a radio scanner and actually picked up the transmissions to prove that this was happening. Now, no one did this with Sally. What they did was, this hearsay, which is all it was just hearsay, was sort of like metamorphosed into fact by those who, the skeptics, who claim, who see themselves as the ultimate adjudicators of what fact is, which is very ironic, I think, and it shows the self-deception that is the skeptics. And so basically this article was written relating this as fact, and of course it wasn't. But the Sally actually, what happened was, in the end, there was this out-of-court settlement, and she won £125,000 in damages from the newspaper plus costs, which she richly deserved.
Yes, of course. Yes, yes.
And the skeptics kept very quiet about this.
This is very, very important case, you know, Ben. This is very, very important. I know in England there are a couple of closed-minded skeptics who are fairly flamboyant, like the Wisemans of this world and Blackmores, but these people...
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me, Victor? Oh, hello? Sorry, we seem to have lost Victor. Hello?
No,
hello?
Hello? You still there?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can.
We lost connection from you. You were talking about the Blackmores and Wisemans of this world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they cannot just say that one medium is a fraud. They cannot do that anymore. The effect of the Sally Morgan case is very, very important. In the old days, some 10, 15 years ago, you could hear the Wiseman and others being very, very nasty, the way they used to describe mediums. Not anymore. They just cannot say a particular medium is a fraud.
Yeah, and they're keeping... I mean, I checked the skeptic media over this issue, and they've gone very quiet about it. They hardly mention... There's a guy called Martin Robbins. He's the only one who's even mentioned Sally Morgan, and he's... even though he's a skeptic himself, he said he agrees that she deserved to win. She deserved to win. She said that it was a major skeptic fail. They completely blew it. And I actually put a warning on a radio. This was before the Daily Mail article came out. There was a radio show, Righteous Indignation. I actually put a comment on there, because this guy Tristan Swale, who's been a guest on this program actually, he was basically talking about this, and I put a comment on the box warning him, saying, don't make any firm statements without evidence. If you think she's doing this, because he basically said the same thing that Paul Zenon did on his radio show, and I said, well, look, go get someone to go in with a radio scanner, get the proof before you start making accusations. And so I kind of out-skeptic the skeptics, I think.
That's good.
You're doing a wonderful job there. Really and truly. It takes a lot of energy. When they're organised and they're so dedicated to what they're talking about, it's like dealing with fundamentalists.
They are fanatical. I mean, we were talking about this last week, how we're dealing with an ideology. And I mean, it's not, what they say about themselves is actually not true. It's not a description, it's a slogan, and they themselves don't realise it. They can't see it themselves. But I mean, and the result, and also we're dealing with some people who are really quite deeply unpleasant people here in some cases. Now, Sally Morgan's experience, what happened was, when this article was published, she received threatening emails. Of course, they were always, it's always on the internet where you say, they're too gutless to ever say anything. That she had death threats. She had threats of rape and mutilation, threats of torture, threats to plant a bomb in her house, and it shook her up really badly, as it would anybody. And especially sort of like a woman who's spending a lot of time on her own. I mean, she has a husband, but she's often on her own. And she lost weight, and you can see she actually stopped eating. She lost weight.
A lot of weight.
And it's really quite. These are the people who, on the one hand, will are part of this movement, this community, who talk about science. They come on TV. People like Wiseman and Blackmore who come on TV and they talk about science and reason and evidence. And there are other members. I'm not saying that Wiseman and Blackmore would ever do Sally Morgan, but there are people who follow those people who, in some cases, are great big fans. I mean, James Randi has a big following and is a bit of a cult figure, actually. Who, when they're on the internet and they're on their own, will turn into these, behave in the most monstrous manner towards others.
The same thing happened to Rita Gould. You probably heard that story from Michael Rolls, that Rita Gould was one of a brilliant materialization medium, absolutely brilliant. And she received death threats and gave it up.
Oh, it's really, these are skeptic, wicked, you say wicked terrorists. I mean, there are skeptic terrorists and skeptic Nazis. And brutal.
Because they're terribly unreasonable. Even when we get, you have to make a distinction between the low level of closed-minded skeptics and they're idiots. They cannot raise a proper complaint. They don't know what to say, what to do. But people like Professor Richard Dawkins, for example, I said, well, look, if you don't accept the paranormal or the evidence for the afterlife, the onus is on you to show where, when, how, and why the evidence is wrong.
Yeah.
The onus is on you. You just cannot ignore it as if it doesn't exist. Now, I mentioned this even to Randy, because we used to email some years ago. I said, look, you have to show why the evidence is not right.
Yeah.
The onus is on you. Because he used to say, oh, you can't prove the negative. I said, that's rubbish. I said, go get some advice from your lawyer that you're not making sense. We presented the evidence. We say the evidence is substantive. We say the evidence I presented is scientific. It is objective and repeatable. And the onus now is on you to explain to the world why what I presented is not correct.
It is absolutely true, and they don't understand this. What they do is they don't. What they do is instead. I mean, what they do instead is, I'll give you another example. Richard Wiseman. I mean, I know Richard Wiseman would never send threatening emails to a medium, but what he did do is he appeared on a BBC interview saying that he would like to see more legislation and regulation of psychics and mediums, which is a very, very worrying and disturbing thing to say.
Yeah, it is.
Because what he actually means is he would like to, I mean, he's using these sort of like euphemisms, legislation, regulation. What he actually means is banned. He wants to actually pass laws that would ban, and he's not the only one. Randy, the others have spoken about how they'd like to see the law come down to prevent psychic mediums from doing what they do.
But you know why? This is why. I tell you why, because we are gaining. I believe we are gaining all the time.
Yeah.
And the skeptics who used to email me before, they disappeared. I mean, I the more I provoke them to take me on, I don't get any response from these skeptics, because I say to them, look, when you say you don't accept the evidence, go to a lawyer to explain to you what's involved in proving that the evidence is not correct. But they just don't know. The dummy ones, the dummy skeptics, they just have a closed mind and said, oh no, your evidence can't be right because there's no afterlife. That's not admissible objection.
But even it's coming from the top. Then I don't know if you read. I can't remember the name of the fellow, but a top scientist said that Rupert Sheldrake's book should be burnt. Can you imagine?
He was the editor of Nature magazine.
That's right.
A major scientific publication.
A major scientist. Anybody who's a scientist saying that another scientist's book should be burnt. That's outrageous.
Without proving that Sheldrake was wrong.
Well, I mean,
this is what I told Richard Dawkins and his mate Stephen Hawking. I wrote to him too. I said, look, you cannot come to conclusions before you investigate. I said, what you're doing, you're coming to conclusions before you investigate. And that's not scientific.
It's an extremely unpleasant thing that this man said. It really is, because the burning of books is the cipher of barbarism. I mean, like there's
of course it is.
The Fahrenheit 451, the famous sci-fi book about the dystopian future. And I mean, it's extremely Orwellian, this kind of language. And
yes,
and of course we've all seen photos of piles of the Nazis, going at the libraries and pulling out every book written by a Jew and putting it in a pile in the street and burning it.
Yeah,
we've all seen this kind of thing, Sorry to bring Godwin's law into this equation immediately, skeptics, but it's true. And he's talking about burning a man's book because he doesn't agree with it. And This is. I mean, there's a really very, very revealing radio show. There was a radio show once, so I listened to skeptic radio shows, and there's one guy who was talking about his daughter, and he said, because he gave the usual flannel about how we skeptics, we rigorously and openly apply the methods of science and reason to empirical claims. We thoroughly assess the evidence and study the pitfalls of human reason and mechanism. And so I brought my daughter up to be a free-thinking rationalist. And then he said, but when she grew up, right, she became a Buddhist.
Serves him right.
Yeah.
Well, Buddhism is a very rational religion.
I mean, but what's revealing is what he said after that, because he said he was very upset that she became a Buddhist after he bought. And what he said then was really, really quite chilling and revealing about the skeptic mentality. He said that he regretted it badly, and if he could go back in time to when she was a young child again, he would bring her up differently. He would quote, indoctrinate her into non-belief, unquote.
Oh my God.
And no, but if the child is born and the child is born spiritually advanced, no amount of conditioning is going to get through to her.
I mean, and what's really exactly, and the thing about this, I mean, indoctrination. I mean, the point I think is that the father didn't understand the paradox, the contradiction in his ideas.
Yeah.
And what's more, I mean, you can go and listen to it, listeners, if you want. It's Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, number 10. It's in the podcast list. And the interesting part is 47 minutes into the program. And it's worth listening to the actual interview. He didn't understand that he was contradicting himself based on what he said about evidence, rationality, and things like that. That to indoctrinate someone into non-belief is almost, it's a paradoxical statement, an oxymoron. So,
it's interesting, in our report this week, I think for the sake of your listeners, every Friday we put out a report, an afterlife report, where free of charge, which often has clips of scientists, alternative scientists who are talking about it. And I love this quote. This one is from Tom, what's his name, the out-of-body experience, Tom, My Big Toe.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas Campbell.
Thomas Campbell.
And he said, this is not science, it's theology. That what the skeptics are coming out with is their own theology.
Yeah.
They're not scientists at all.
They're secular theology.
It's extremely chilling and revealing to hear them say things like indoctrinating people into non-belief. And what's even more amazing is that the presenter of the program, it's a panel of presenters, they didn't even break their stride. It went straight over their head, and they didn't even notice it. It didn't raise a ripple. So this is really interesting. I mean, I suppose the question we're talking about here, which Victor and Wendy are presenting the case for, the afterlife. What? I mean, everyone it's the one certainty in life is they say death and taxes, but not everyone pays tax. So death is the one certainty.
True.
One is the one certainty in life. Whatever happens, we know that our life one day will end, and the question of what happens next is surely the oldest question ever. I mean, we've been thinking about it for as long as we've been human. There's even evidence that some animals consider this question, like elephants, for example, seem to be aware of this question. So, I mean, if it comes forward that there is some kind of, if it can be sort of like rationally deduced that when we die, we don't just disappear, we don't go into the hands of some merciless God who pops up our good and bad sides and sends us to hell or heaven. Or the alternative is we're just animated lumps of meat, and when we die we rot, and that's the end of us. What if there's a third alternative, which you have discussed, and what we have discussed in these last two programs? The question is, I mean, why is there this? It's almost this Hegelian antithesis, I tend to think of it as, in the sense that whenever any idea comes forward, there has to be an opposing idea generated by it. And I get the feeling the skeptics are kind of this Hegelian antithesis of this fact. But I wanted to ask you, and we're coming close to the end of this program now, but I wanted to ask you before you go, why you think there are, the skeptics are there, and why are they? What is the kind of social phenomenon of the skeptic? What is it, and why does it exist?
Look, I had to do research in this very narrow area because it's very, very important. And I found that the prejudice against the paranormal is historical. The theologians, especially during the time where they used to burn people for their beliefs, anyone who was a medium or a psychic, or anyone who supported the mediums and the psychics was burned at the stake. Now, Arthur Finlay, the great historian from Scotland, told us that between 1272 and 1835, the inquisitors killed over 20 million people, and including those who were psychics and mediums. So that became entrenched in the culture, in the tradition and the history of Judeo-Christian countries. And it's a knee-jerk reaction that somebody mentions the paranormal, you reject it. Yeah. Because for hundreds of years they killed these mediums. Even today, Ben, today I got emails from Europe, and they said those priests are saying horrible things about the paranormal, even today. Yeah. And one priest I met here in Sydney was very, very upset, very concerned, very worried. I said, what's wrong? He said, well, we're losing numbers. It's the worst crisis in the history of the church. I said, what? He said, well, he said, it appears from the surveys more people are going to see a medium and a psychic on Sundays than going to church on Sundays. And this is true. We see it ourselves. When we drove around one morning to about 6 churches on a Sunday, hardly anybody there. The church, but only because this is an age of science. Because people today are not believing the theologians that there's something wrong with mediumship. But as I said, for hundreds of years, theologians deeply entrenched this bias against the paranormal, and those today who are closed-minded skeptics are just merely repeating what people in the past thought. Yeah. And this is
combining it and justifying it with science.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ironic. Right. The skeptics, of course, reject religion, and they'll stand. This is the one issue where they will unite, and they'll stand shoulder to shoulder.
It's fascinating, isn't it? So you've got the extremes on both ends working together.
And not only that, I did challenge these skeptics when I first started to report David's materialization in my weekly report. I said, I have a sponsor who came with us and saw everything, who is willing to pay anyone $500,000 to any skeptic who could show that there's fraud in what the David Thompson is doing with his mediumship. Because they were very hostile when I was saying, look, they're materializing, they're speaking to us with the same voice they had when they were on Earth. It's been confirmed by their loved ones. And they said, oh, no, this couldn't be right. I said, look, you either put up or shut up. Here's $500,000 for anyone who could prove that there's fraud going on. But, I said, if you fail, and when you fail, you will pay my medium $100,000 for his problem time. Since that time, not one skeptic ever raised that issue again. Not one.
I mean, it's amazing.
I call that bluff.
Well done, yeah. It's absolutely true. And they can't even see their own sort of like falsehoods. But I think I've worked out what motivates some of them. I mean, I've been listening to skeptics talk, and some of them, I mean, I think what they do is they've got this idea in their head that that people who believe in the afterlife, it's sort of like a kind of, it's what Sigmund Freud talked a lot about this, so did Bertrand Russell, that it's kind of like death awareness. And that when you have death awareness, you're aware of your own demise. So we humans have concocted a kind of a safety net, a psychological safety net, a comfort blanket to protect us from the awful truth of our finality. Now that's, on a sense, you could say that's a very condescending attitude, and I think it's just the condescending nature of it is exactly why they have this idea. I mean, they could say, well, if people in general don't believe in an afterlife because they need to believe in it, otherwise because they can't face the idea they're going to die, then you can say, but me, I can face it. I know I'm going to cease to exist, but I'm superior because I can face up to that. These inferior people need that comfort blanket, but I don't. And it's kind of, it must be a very intoxicating feeling, that.
It is.
Look, I've put in my book, I think it's in my book, 9 reasons why skeptics remain stubborn, unreasonably stubborn. Can I go through them quickly, very quickly?
Yeah.
Number 1, this is technical. Number 1 is what I call the rationalization through cognitive dissonance. This means that when the skeptics hear information fundamentally inconsistent with their own beliefs, their mind tells them to reject it. Right? Number 2, cathexis is also another psychological term. This is an abstract connection, an inexplicable connection with belief. It's economic. Number 3 is the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, where it talks about denial, similar to the dissonance, where information coming through cannot be accepted by the mind of the skeptic, so they deny everything. There is the environmental programming. These skeptics are born in an environment that perhaps taught them how to be skeptical. What I mean by this is, for example, this is generally and basically somebody born in England today, or in a Judeo-Christian country, or to Christian family, they're likely to grow up as Christians. Someone born in India is likely to be a Hindu. Someone in Israel likely to be of the Jewish faith. Someone in Iran a Muslim. So the environment plays a big part in showing why we think the way we do. The number 6 one is the primary motivation is money, power, and status. The wise men of this world, the Blackmores and the Randys, they do it for money because they want attention. They want to promote their own profession. Number 7 is the smorgasbord argument. This is notorious with Professor Stephen Hawking and only talk about things that are consistent with their own belief. But anything that shows them they're fundamentally wrong, they don't talk about it. And number 8 is what I call the post-hypnotic effect. There's a critical time that it's like a hypnotist who will tell a person under hypnosis that an onion is going to taste as good as an apple. And he gets them out of trance, gives them something, and then say, oh, look, so try this, will you? He gives them an onion and says, oh, this is nice, this is just like an apple. This kind of post-hypnotic effect is powerful, very powerful. And finally, number 9, these closed-minded are just basically they're spiritually retarded. You know what I mean? It may take you a lifetime or two to come to our standard, our level.
I mean, the status one is very interesting. I mean, the thing I talked about the wish fulfillment, being able to face in their mind resist the wishful fulfillment of death. I call that MBA, Materialist Bravery Award. And I've actually created a little medal, and I've actually sent it to a few people, including Wiseman, Blackmore. I've sent one to the British Humanist Association. But we're running out of time now, unfortunately. But before we go, it's been great having you on, and both of you, and it'd be lovely to have you both back again sometime.
Of course, yes. Sure.
You can update us on any new things you discover and things like that. But, before we go, just to tell listeners how they can find out more about you, how they can. I know we discussed this in last week's program, but we'll go through it again.
Wendy?
Well, we've got our website, which is www.victorzammit.com. That's VICTORZAMMIT.com. Now that has the details where people can sign up for the Friday Afterlife report, which is free. All they have to do is just put their email address in the little box, and every Friday they'll receive the latest research, great videos like yours, I'm hoping, or links where they can purchase videos, book reviews, lots of items that people will find, the latest items in the research. We've been doing this every Friday for the last 15 years. Right. And there's also details of the book. Our book is A Lawyer Presents the Evidence for the Afterlife. Mm-hmm. That's available from Amazon UK or the Book Depository or any of the online bookstores. And there's also lots of items on the website. A lot of people go back to the website over and over again because there's lots and lots of information about the evidence for the afterlife there. Mm.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Victor and Wendy, it's been great having you on the program. It's been fascinating talking to you. And you have a good day, and hopefully we'll see you again soon on the HPANWO show on Critical Mass Radio.
Thanks, Ben, for that.
Thanks, Ben. It's been lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you.
Hospital porters' pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio.